Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. First time to the show, Chelsea Cohen. How you doing?
Doing all right, thanks.
Excellent. So Chelsea, first time on the show. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of background on yourself and then we'll get into the content?
Sure. So I've been selling on Amazon since 2014, and in 2018 started looking at my profitability, how much money I was keeping versus making, and started diving into inventory because that was the biggest place I was losing money. So didn't find any tools that really worked for me, and then ended up meeting my business partner. We started a company called Stockouts. So for the past 4 years, I've been working very heavily with sellers on inventory management and how to improve profit through inventory management.
Cool. And then, so today's subject, we're going to be talking the true unit economics. Do you want to break
Mhm.
that down for us and then we'll pepper down into the individual content?
Sure. True unit economics is, first of all, unit economics is looking at with every single unit that you're selling. So,
Mm.
more so than SKUs, for every single unit that you're selling, what is the actual profit? What are the actual costs involved? And how much are you actually making and keeping with regard to every single item that you're selling
Yeah.
on Amazon?
Cool. All right, so let's just start getting into it. So we're going to talk about per SKU level, into shipment, month over month. Do you want to give us a run through on that?
Yeah. So the thing to understand with unit economics is that in our business with inventory, it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will do estimates. And that's why I like to emphasize true unit economics, because I believe that currently there are very, very few people who actually are applying true unit economics, just based on the amount of detail involved in getting to that true data rather than estimates, which is what most people have.
Yeah. And so, how do people get there? Because obviously, the ball is always in play, right? So, there's going
Mhm.
to things that shipping goes up and down. There's all these different things, your landed costs, all
Yeah.
adjustments. And normally, once you've set up,
Mhm.
in terms of determining the product, you obviously work out your margins and everything else. But
Yeah.
then some people completely forget, right? And then you'll go month by month and you realize that your costs are creeping up or you haven't added additional costs that came later from additional optimizations and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. The first thing that people need to start understanding is what you originally listed as the unit economics or the profitability, the COGS of your SKU tends to change over time, and we don't tend to adjust that. We
Hmm.
don't tend to factor certain things in. We look at the cost of goods in terms of how much are we paying our supplier, how much is it costing as an estimate to ship, but as shipping changes, we don't tend to adjust that. We don't adjust for things like refunds,
Hmm.
and we don't adjust for, it's called inventory shrinkage, which is basically unfulfillable inventory or inventory that just never arrived to Amazon or never arrived to your warehouse. All of those ways that what you ordered and what you actually ended up having a sellable SKU, the difference there is inventory shrinkage.
Yeah. So how do people go about managing this on a manual basis? I know that you've got the software. We can talk about that at the end, obviously. But obviously, content first, and obviously the people going to listening are either going to use the software or they're going to manage it internally.
Mhm.
How do people that are managing it internally? How would they kind of manage this on a manual basis
Mhm.
and being structured with it and staying the course, rather than forgetting about it?
Sure. It is a lot of it at this point. Manual work software can get you part of the way there,
Yeah.
and in terms of manual, if you're doing the whole thing manually, you would have to break down on a per SKU level, and then
Mm.
you would have to track using something that is referred to as FIFO, or first in, first
Mm.
out. And that means you're looking at every single shipment. So if you know that you've purchased 10,000 units and you know how much you paid for the container, you would have to create a calculation that looks at how much you paid for the container versus how many SKUs were in there. What is the size of the SKU? And this would be something you could create as a formula inside of a software or inside of a spreadsheet.
Like Excel, yeah.
Yeah, it's can be complicated, but once you set it up, it would be simply plugging in what you shipped in that container. If you are able to calculate the size of each unit, then you can break down what each container, the price of the container, and how that broke down with every single SKU, so that each SKU you can attribute a certain shipping value for that container.
Yeah. So once that's in place and there's someone who's on top of that on a regular basis, because it's the lifeblood of the business outside of cash flow.
Sure.
What do people do in terms of improving their unit economics in order to scale? Obviously, scaling costs money as well,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's looking at things like, can you lower your refund rate? That would be one small piece that you could focus on. And then shifting over, is there a way to optimize your shipping? Are you using for example, a container calculator? There's a free one, peer-to-peer, that's PIER, to the number 2, peer.com/loadcalc is a free container calculator, which will optimize your containers. There's also things like pallet calculators, which will, and we have one on Stock at stock.com/tools. That's free, but a calculator that looks at your unit size and your pallet dimensions and does this math to basically calculate the best carton configuration and the best pallet configuration to be able to lower your total cartons and your total pallets to reduce storage fees.
Yeah. And in terms of, if we're looking to increase more profit, better cash flow, capital reinvested, what are we looking at in terms of leverage here?
In terms of cash flow, that's where your inventory really comes into play. Your inventory, your sell-through, being able to increase your sell-through, right? Being able to send in smaller orders more frequently. We tend to think that, if you order a bunch and you get a discount, that's going to benefit you. But it tends to be the case that if I can turn over my money faster than you can, something that's referred to as velocity of money, and something that I don't think enough of the industry really understands or focuses on is
that same thing as opportunity costs. So you've got to look at your opportunity costs by inventory selling slower, and then calculation of the turns of inventory, what is going to come out on top. Is it better to do 2-3 turns a year? Is it better to have more velocity, but then look at the availability of cash as well for each of those turns, and how far out you can turn for before you run out of cash?
Yeah, exactly. And, can you get that capital back? Can you reinvest it? And you need to be able to know where you're going to reinvest it in order to scale. And then the other factor is that every month that you have inventory in storage, you have holding fees. You're paying Amazon, you're paying your 3PL, and your profit decreases every single month with those products.
Cool. And what else do you want to cover on this as well?
You need to understand in terms of inventory management, where's your capital going, like we said, and then do you have systems in place to be able to turn over that inventory, and also to be able to avoid stockouts, because that becomes very expensive. In terms of being able to control your cash flow and scale.
So in a nutshell then, so what is it with Stock? What are the problems that they solve? Because I'm sure you still got to input a lot of information to keep everything up to date. So obviously it's doing the grunt work, but what would you say is, where's the big time saver outside of the grunt work, right? Because all software do grunt work, right? Outside of that, what's some of the key things that really benefit in terms of return on investment for the end user?
Yeah. So first, Stock right now is an inventory management software.
Mm.
We will be going into unit economics, and it's my passion to get into true unit economics in this coming year, because it doesn't really exist. Estimated unit economics exists.
Yeah.
So true unit economics is something that we're diving into. But in terms of improving that, the focus right now is on improving inventory turn, avoiding stockouts, improving your IPI score. And a tool is just a tool, right?
Yeah.
It's how you use it. And I learned very early on, 2019, started talking to sellers. For the first year and a half of Stocked, I talked to sellers. I onboarded every single seller that came on board and really talked about what their problems were, and that education was really lacking on inventory, and systems needed to be developed and put in place. And so that's one of the things that I started championing was we have systems and specific reports that are being used on a regular basis to avoid stockouts and improve turnover, so that your overstock fees tend to reduce.
Yeah. Indeed, and going back to what you're saying earlier on, we were talking about with stockouts, that can be critical in terms of if you're spending money to rank, especially with PPC, the cost of PPC going up.
Yeah.
You have to build in the costs of re-ranking a product as well, and that can, depending on the velocity in that market and how competitive it is, how much that's going to get you back straight again before you start selling through the new batch of inventory, especially if you've been on time, you've hit your markers in terms of your milestones, turning inventory, getting it all right, but then there's the delay. And when there's the delay and then you stock out, there's only so far you can go out on your shield and then hold back, for a few weeks, etc. But it depends on the period of years. So re-ranking can be very, very expensive business. Even when you've done everything right, there's so much in the equation that is out of your hands.
Yeah, exactly. That side of stockouts is expensive. There's an additional cost that a lot of people don't look at, and that's the money that you spent to drive yourself into a stockout due to marketing. I have a client of mine about a year and a half back was doing a sale for Mother's Day here in the US in, I believe it was in May, and did a 20% off deal, did a bunch of lightning deals that equated to about 20% off, sent it out to this list. And this is an 8-figure seller. And went really well. The next month, talked to him about Father's Day, which is June, and all of these lightning deals that he had scheduled he was canceling because he was going to stock out. And it was that 20% off that was spent could have been full price sales and avoided a stock out. And so that's the piece that people don't understand is the money that you're paying for discounts, for, expensive PPC, and for advertising agencies, because every advertising agency I've talked to has stocked out a client, So those are the costs that you're not factoring in either.
Yeah. Any other news at the moment in terms of stockouts, scores, etc.? Is there anything you want to cover?
I would say, mentioning the types of reports and the type of system that sellers should have in place to increase profit, to avoid stockouts, to increase sell-through. And those reports that I usually advise is just, first and foremost, marketing should be giving a report on the marketing plan to the inventory team to be able to analyze whether there's going to be a stock out based on what their plans are. And then beyond that, inventory actually needs to be providing reports on a regular basis, whether that's weekly or monthly, depending on the business. Reports that we like to encourage people is the stock out risk report, which SKUs could stock out, how many days would that stock out last based on what's coming in, and is that avoidable? Can you avoid an 8-day stock out? Is it going to be a 30-day stock out, and then maybe you should just push the rankings and let it stock out at the highest point, and then close the listing? What is that strategy for avoiding stock outs? what is the strategy for overstock,
Yeah.
slow sellers report, liquidation report, and overstock, which could be your best sellers or could be, your slow sellers. But being able to have that data, they start game planning. The marketing team would start game planning, and their marketing plans actually improve and focus on profitability rather than just selling the best sellers.
Yeah, indeed. What's the best way that people can reach you?
If you go to sostock.com/connect, all of the socials are there. You can reach me that way. And then also we have demo there. We have free tools. And and really like to talk to sellers, to other sellers, and help people on that point.
Sounds good. Chelsea, thank you for joining us today. Guys, thank you for joining us. I'll be back here again next week. Sharon will be up next. Take care of yourself and your family. Much love, and I'll see you again soon.